This is how to create those Hollywood-level visual masterpieces within moments. With a little bit of love from After Effects, creating powerful cinematics of your design has never been easier. So, let's get started. Alright, let us be your guide to creating masterful work and your source for great beards and bad haircuts. The first step I suggest is gathering a couple of 3D models that you may need for your scene. For instance, you can find a lot of great 3D models for free when you just do a quick search. You may also get my project if you want as well. Now, you can import 3D models into After Effects as .objs, GLBs, and GLTFs. And typically, you'll need to scale down your model and reposition it as needed, but always start with your main master object first. From here, the next step is to set up a floor by drawing out a very large white rectangle to box in your ideas. But to let those ideas flourish, make it a 3D layer and set the X rotation to 90 degrees and lower the position just under your main object. And now you're gonna have a floor as a point of reference to build out the rest of your scene. Additionally, it's a good idea to also create a camera, and then you can use the dolly towards cursor tool to zoom out, so then you can open up your scene and decide how wide you want everything to be. You may also want to scale up your floor if you quote unquote go out of bounds, which is pretty cool. Also, to beautify your work, create an environment light now, so this way you can see how the shadows affect your scene with, say the rotation and intensity light values. So essentially, if your boss or client walks in, your scene just won't look like complete mush, but we'll revisit how to get that cinematic clean look a little bit later. And assure you always produce cinematic work in no time with our free templates, seamless transitions, and customizable motion graphics. All here in our Motion Duck extension, you can add thousands of templates and presets directly into your project and tailor them to fit your needs in seconds. So be sure to keep your creative flow going for our countless assets linked below. If you do pick up anything, you will be supporting this channel, so thank you very much. Alright, let's get to it and build out the rest of this scene. And what's cool, if you want to create your own 3D objects and specifically, create an automated array of shapes around a central object, you can keep things simple by just creating, say, a square. And when you make it 3D, you can increase its extrusion depth and finally rotate it by 90 degrees. It's up to you if you want to reposition these types of objects around your scene, but since I want to have this duplicated around the center of our columns here, we can use an expression written by our future overlord to save us from the mundane task of duplicating this like a million times. So you can copy this expression from the description and alt-click the stopwatch for position and paste it right here. Now, to break this down, first we need a null object that is a 3D layer, and we'll rename it to center. Essentially, this expression will duplicate this rectangle around the null object from 1200 position points away, as long as the null is called center. And because the total is set to 50, we can evenly distribute 50 duplicates without any issues. So Control D or Command D about 50 times. Additionally, if we lower the Y position of the null object, all these shapes will lower as well. You'll also probably notice that the height of each rectangle is slightly offset due to the random height settings that I added in. So the moral of this story is that, ChatGPT can help you write just about any expression that you need to save your insanity. Further save your insanity, select all these rectangles and pre-compose them, and then click continuously rasterize and make the comp 3D to keep things organized. Additionally, you can go back in and hide some of these shapes as well to kind of open up your central part of your scene. Okay, perfect. So we know how to work with basic shapes, but feel free to add in other 3D objects and position them in your scene. Typically, if you find .objs, they will be textureless, which will allow you to create this white plain look. If you want texture, you're gonna need to import your 3D object as a GLB or GLTF. But for this clean look, these trees and shrubs will make a great touch to our scene, and that should do it for layout. Because now it's time for the final touches of camera movement, looks, and autographs, baby. For the camera movement, add keyframes for position and point of interest, and then click 3D to keep your baby computer alive. But what's cool is I'll move forward here and use the XY camera control, or specifically called the pan around cursor tool, to get low on this floor. And we can cycle back and forth with the orbit tool to create a low angle. And then feel free to zoom in or out to create your first camera movement. Very subtle, and you just can't go wrong with this. However, for another angle, create another camera and shorten its duration to only be a couple of seconds long. So what will happen is After Effects will use this camera first, and then we'll go to the second. But if you create a 3D null object and parent the new camera to it, we can keyframe the Y rotation of the null to spin around the scene. And when you do a close angle like this, it just looks really cool because you really get those, foreground details up close. All right, just perfect. And before we can win the Best Cinematography Award, we need to finalize the look of this and provide that white, crisp feel. Firstly, you should experiment with HDRIs because you can set your environment light to these and you will completely change the look of your lighting. And as a pro tip, always mess with your light's rotation and intensity to get the right look for each camera angle. However, to really get that white look, create a solid layer and apply the gradient ramp effect to it. Set both these available colors to a slightly, different middle gray colors like so, and then set the blending mode of this layer to screen, and that's it. Seriously, you're welcome to create an adjustment layer and mix noise effect and curves to further look, but overall, I hope you enjoyed this guide, and always be creating.